with Texas A&M and Utah State on Saturday. A&M saw a strong performance from the returning starting QB Marcel Reed in that win last week over UTSA. So Reed threw for a career best 4 touchdown passes, 289 yards through the air. So here's his head coach Mike Elko on Elko's takeaways from Reed's performance in week 1. Take a listen.
I thought he did a nice job. I thought he was comfortable. I thought he was poised. Obviously, there's never going to be a week where there's not things he's going to wish he had back. That's just going to be the nature of playing quarterback. But I thought he delivered some really confident balls across the middle on time. We talked a lot about that last year, how we never really felt like the rhythm and timing of the passing game got right. I felt like we felt that a lot better Saturday, just balls coming out of cuts in rhythm on time, catch and run opportunities. I think all that stuff was good to see.
All right, Tom and Brandon are back with us here to preview Utah State and Texas A&M. If we're kind of looking at the X's and O's here, right, we just heard Elko there talking about A&M, Marcel Reed, their passing offense there. If we're looking at that against Utah State's passing defense, Brandon, what are you going to be honing in on with these two things here coming all two ahead?
Well, for me, I'm not too worried about the pass defense as much as I am just trying to hang in there any way you can. I mean, listen, Texas A&M is probably going to be able to do almost anything they want offensively against Utah State in this game, whether it's through the air or on the ground. Marcel Reed is dynamic. He's going to be able to create with his legs, be able to throw the ball down the field if he needs to. I do think A&M is still trying to figure some things out in the pass offense with some new pieces there and trying to kind of spread it out a little bit more instead of just targeting 1 to 2 guys. From what I'm hearing down there, they're wanting to spread the ball out a little bit more here in week 2, especially ahead of their matchup having to go to Notre Dame in week 3. So I expect Texas A&M is going to be a little bit more diverse, trying to get the ball in more players' hands as they continue to try and figure out who are their top 2 to 3 pass catchers.
Yeah, it's like I don't know how much of what we saw from the Aggies offense last year is who the Aggies plan to be, or if it's just the Aggies are trying to, like Brandon kind of mentioned there, just work on their passing game, because that has been the one question with Marcel Reed and the one area they wanted to see development. So you look at UTSA last week, you look at Utah State this week, and you say to yourself, well, we could probably try some things with this passing offense. We don't want to run Marcel Reed too much because we don't want him taking hits in games we should have comfortable wins in, especially when we've got Notre Dame looming, and we'd kind of like, maybe keep some stuff hidden and under wraps for that game before we start really leaning into our rushing offense, which I think even despite what we saw last week with the Aggies throwing the ball over 60% of the time, I still think the rushing offense is going to be the bread and butter of what this team does once they get into SEC play. So I think you'll probably see Reed, throw pretty much a lot in this game still just to work on it, but I wouldn't read too much into it because, again, the strength of this team is in its running backs and it's in Marcel Reed's legs.
All right, so you can try some things, but don't show all your cards when you have Notre Dame coming up in the upcoming week or so. Some news coming down for A&M. Their junior safety, Dalton Brooks, he will be available to make his season debut in this matchup. So, Tom, how much of a boost is that for the Aggies overall if he's ready to go and is as close to 100% as he can be?
I think it's a big boost because if you saw last week against UTSA, this is a team that got gashed quite a bit, especially on the ground by the Roadrunners offense. And one of the things you look at is part of that is by design. Like when it comes to Mike Elko defenses, he's kind of willing to give you something in the run game because he's just trying to limit explosive plays. And then if you get to the red zone, he's very comfortable with his defense being able to keep you from finishing the drives and holding you to field goals. But still, to give up the amount of rushing yards they did to UTSA last week was alarming. And I think not having one of your starting safeties back there was part of the problem because there's a lot of misdirection in UTSA's offense to get your safeties and linebackers heading in the wrong direction to open up lanes to take advantage of once they get to the second level. And it's also kind of what Utah State's going to be trying to do on offense because that's kind of their bread and butter in their run game as well. So to get him back in there, I think it will be big for the Aggies defense, and I think we'll probably see a bit of a better performance against the run this week.
And we already talked about Marcel Reed, right? But Brandon, that is your guy, your impact player to watch here for A&M as, again, we're kind of looking for some more progress in his passing game as already discussed.
Yeah, exactly that. I want to see him be a little bit more diverse, throwing the ball a little bit, get a rhythm going, and then see if he can develop something to where you're going on a drive, so to speak. And there's always a drive in a game where you're going to count on a receiver to catch 2 to 3 balls, right? I want to see that in a drive from Texas A&M against Utah State. Find someone that is a safety valve for you that you can always count on. That is what I want to see. I mean, Casey Concepcion is someone that could be that player. He didn't catch many passes last week. I think he's someone to really look out for in this game, and especially going forward. As Tom said, and as we've mentioned, we know what Texas A&M can do running the ball. We know what Marcel Reed can do running the ball. Let's see what he can do throwing the ball. I'm sure they'll probably even try to run some 2-minute, 4-minute type drills with him in this game.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with A&M's other safety, the one that did play last week, Marcus Ratliff, for much of the same reasons why I think getting the other safety back is so big. You know, Bronco Mendenhall has taken over at Utah State this year. He's had multiple offensive coordinators at all his stops. Last year's coordinator is now the offensive coordinator at Utah, brought Devin Dampier with him. And now Kevin McGivern, who has a history at Utah State, is the OC under Mendenhall with the Aggies. But the one thing they always have in common is their offenses are creative. They're designed to confuse and to get you out of your lanes, to get you out of your gaps, to create explosive opportunities, whether it's in the run game or the passing game. So I think A&M on the back end in this game, to make sure that things aren't quite as, out of control as they were at times last week against UTSA, we're going to need to see both of those safeties playing very well, either flying to the ball and making tackles, or at least staying over the top and not letting anything get overhead. Keep it all in front of you. I think that will be a huge part for this Aggies defense, and if they execute, this should be a pretty easy win for A&M.
All right, if we do talk about the Utah State side of things, Bronco Mendenhall getting his first win as head coach there, and we saw some great things from that program in week one, right? Albeit the opponent not the toughest, but this game feels very lopsided. We already touched on that, but Tom, how do they take a step forward despite that, right? How do they keep it going in the right direction despite, the lopsided record that they have against SEC teams in the past?
Yeah, you're probably not going to win this game, Utah State. I'm not telling you to go in there and think you got no chance, but if you lose, don't feel too bad about it. Instead, focus on the rest of this season, because I'm a big Bronco Mendenhall believer. I think he's one of the best college football coaches in the country, and he's proven it at multiple stops where he's won games at places where it's been very difficult for programs to win. And I think if you look at the rest of this season, if you never want to take too much away from the early weeks of a college football season, but one of the things that stands out to me is I think there's a lot more wiggle room in the Mountain West than maybe we thought coming into the year. And I'm not just saying that because of what happened to Boise State against South Florida last week. I just think a lot of the teams that we expected to be the best teams in that league look a little suspect in some areas. And Utah State, with a very good coach and a good coaching staff and some excellent players, they might be able to make some noise in that conference this year and surprise a lot of people. So don't feel too bad about whatever happens to you in College Station this weekend, and worry about the Mountain West, because I think this team can get to a bowl.
All right, when it comes to an impact player to watch for Utah State, you were targeting Miles Davis. Brandon, tell us why.
Yeah, if running the ball is cool, consider me Miles Davis, because he's averaging 7.3 yards per carry and didn't really get necessarily a lot of opportunities on third down. In fact, he only had one carry on third down, and that's because Utah State was so far behind the sticks. 2/3 of their third downs last week were from 7 yards or further out. So for Utah State, let's run the ball early on some downs, maybe get yourself in some second and medium situations. And then if you get the third down, maybe they can get Miles Davis more involved in the offense. As I said, he only got to touch the ball once on third down last week because they were in third and long situations. Maybe run the ball a little bit more on these earlier downs. Get your best player more involved. And to me, that's Miles Davis. It's crucial for them if they want to hang around Texas A&M.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I do think Utah State's rushing game will be pivotal for them to at least slow the game down and limit possessions to hang within. But I also think my impact player is quarterback Bryson Barnes, because while I don't want him dropping back to throw 25 to 30 times in this game, I do want him to be able to make some plays. Because if you look back at last week with UTSA, they were able to run the ball like crazy on the Aggies, but they were really not able to get anything going in the passing game. It was just dinking and dunking and no real big plays to help keep chains moving. If you let A&M just kind of let you funnel your run game into a spot where they can limit you and you're not able to get them out of it with your passing game, it's going to be very difficult for Utah State to go in there and shock the world. So Bryson Barnes is going to have to show an ability to hit some throws just to make A&M respect it, to maybe open up the run game even further.
Tip-off for Utah State A&M is Saturday at 12:45 Eastern Time. Tom, Brandon, previewing the matchup for us. We certainly appreciate it, gentlemen. Great stuff as always. And CBS Sports has got you covered all season long on multiple platforms. Make sure you check out the college football YouTube channel for CBS Sports. You can subscribe right now by scanning that QR code on your screen.